In the second part of this activity, we're going to look at animal respiration. So remember, as background, all animals need to exchange gases, and this is due to cellular respiration. And so organisms need to be able to take in oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. And then the manner in which they do this is going to be based on their specific needs and the environment that they find themselves in. So remember, cellular respiration breaks down into aerobic, using oxygen, or anaerobic, that's without oxygen. We're really going to focus here on aerobic. So in this aerobic respiration, we're going to take glucose and use oxygen to create CO2, water, and our energy, ATP. And remember, all organisms are going to have to be able to get oxygen and then get rid of CO2. So they need to get the reactants and get rid of the products. So we're going to look at a couple ways that that different organisms do this. So let's first look at fish. They breathe using gills for the most part, and they're going to exchange carbon dioxide with oxygen that's dissolved in the water. And this is going to be through the process of diffusion. Remember, this is passive transport. So there's not going to be any energy necessary to be able to exchange these gases. So fish are going to take in oxygen that is in the water. They pass it across their gills, and the oxygen diffuses into the blood, and the CO2 diffuses out into the water. So let's look at this broken down a little bit more. So this is just going to represent one of the little parts of the gill. And within the gills, there are blood vessels. So these blood vessels are going to be bringing things from cells and then taking materials to cells. So when they're coming from the cells, they've got a lot of carbon dioxide. Remember, that product of cellular respiration. Now water is going to be passing over this blood vessel, and in that water is a whole bunch of dissolved oxygen. And then as a result of this, the CO2 and oxygen are going to essentially switch. So CO2 is going to diffuse, remember, without energy, out of the blood and into the water, and the oxygen is going to diffuse from the water into the blood. Now the blood can return to the cells and bring oxygen. Now, amphibians breathe through lungs, but they also breathe through their skin. And the way that their lungs work is they have little air sacs that allow CO2 and oxygen to be exchanged between the air and the blood. And this is actually the exact same method that reptiles and mammals use, because remember, reptiles and mammals all just evolved from amphibians. And exchange happens with their skin as well, but only if it's wet. This is one of the reasons why amphibians have to stay near the water. So let's look at how this works in an amphibian. So we have a small air sac, and each one of these, and there's lots and lots of them within the lungs of an organism, are surrounded by these blood vessels. So remember, in the blood, again, is CO2, because we're trying to get rid of it. The organism is going to breathe in and pull a bunch of oxygen into its lungs. And then the oxygen and the CO2 are going to diffuse across the membrane and switch. So now you have oxygenated blood that can go back and provide the necessary materials for more cellular respiration. And then the organism will exhale and get rid of the carbon dioxide. Birds have a really efficient lung system where they actually have these multiple air sacs in addition to their lungs. So here's an example of that. And this allows them to much more efficiently pull in oxygen, exchange it with carbon dioxide, and then release it. And so what you need to do now is click on the button below the video and answer the questions thinking about what we've just talked about.